One of my favorite tapes to pop into the VCR while my parents were still asleep on Saturday mornings was this bizarre psychedelic kids movie that will leave you with way more questions than answers. Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure, would see its wide release on April Fool's Day 1977, which probably felt appropriate to the audiences who came in expecting a fun animated children's musical but ended up getting whatever this is. The movie starts out simple enough, following a little girl named Marcella who is running up to her playroom to put away her favorite doll, Raggedy Ann. After she leaves her room, the scene pans into Raggedy Ann, who slowly comes to life along with all the other toys. Stop me if this is starting to sound familiar. At this point, the movie's pretty normal and even kind of cute. But this is where you get your first clue that the film might not be exactly what it seems, because with very little context whatsoever, we see this.
They're so curious, we could die. Whoa!
And while it is kind of off-putting, this scene doesn't send you into a full-blown panic, yet. As the movie continues, Raggedy Andy is introduced. He gets a song and dance about how he's no girl's toy, which only seems to serve in making the character unlikable, and we find out that Marcella got a new doll for her birthday named Babette. When Babette meets the other dolls, she's just kind of mean. She lashes out at them, says she misses Paris, and calls the playroom a horrible place and is just generally terrible for no good reason. Next, we meet this pirate trapped inside a snow globe who wants to abduct Babette and make her his wife. I'd like to take a moment to mention that at this point we're at approximately the 20-minute mark and more than half of the characters we have met are either terrifying monsters or just plain awful. But it gets worse. The pirate manages to escape his snow globe, capture Babette, and fly out the window of the playroom into a place the other characters call the Deep Woods. Raggedy Ann and Andy then decide to follow the ship in order to rescue Babette. Not because they like her, because remember, she's terrible, but because they don't want to ruin Marcella's birthday. So they jump out of this window and go full ragdoll, which I admit I kind of loved because it's like they have a sort of useless superpower of taking 0 fall damage. And just as they leave the house, the plot of this movie completely leaves planet Earth. The pair next meet a toy camel who has bad knees, sings sad songs about how lonely he is, and has these unexplainable moments where he just completely disassociates from reality. At one point, he gets Raggedy Ann and Andy on his back so he can run all 3 of them off a cliff while chasing his own hallucinations. After they fall off the cliff, they land into this giant sea of goop that turns out to be made of living taffy and sweets that keeps eating itself, and it sings a song about how it can never be happy until it finds a sweetheart, and how it's gonna just keep eating until that magical moment happens. This is the point in the movie where you either went full fight or flight mode, because it's the scene that sets the tone for just how weird the rest of the film is going to be. The dolls eventually escape this nightmare monster and run into a purple night guy with piercing red eyes who keeps playing these novelty store electric gum hand buzzer pranks on them. He then takes Raggedy Ann and Andy to meet a character called King Cuckoo, an angry little German man who is made fun of by his subjects for being a literal short king. And the only way he can get bigger is by laughing as parts of his body inflate and deflate. Then Raggedy Ann and Andy start a pie war and escape after the king tries to take them captive, and they end up stealing a Dr. Seuss submarine boat. But as this movie has no chill, the king calls a sea monster on a telephone because why not, and the two team up to stop the heroes because, and I quote, "There's no bigger laugh than seeing the good guys get it." Raggedy Ann and Andy, and the camel, who's still with us for some reason, all find the pirate ship, but Babette, who has taken over the ship, has locked up her kidnapper in the brig and is intent on sailing the boat back to Paris. And I mean, honestly, slay. However, the sea monster and the king catch up with them and start tickling everyone, which causes the king to do his weird inflation thing, which I'm sure awakened something in someone, until the pirate's bird pops him like a balloon, and that's basically the end of the movie. Until we re-enter the real world to find that all the toys are just laying outside around a little pond in the backyard. Marcella collects them and takes them inside, only briefly questioning how all the toys from the inside of her room got into her backyard. Then everyone makes up, there is no more conflict and no more story. You are left with nothing but a 104-degree fever and about 1,000 unanswered questions. And of course this. Part of what made this movie so absolutely wild looking was having different animators working individually on each character. The movie was also adapted into a Broadway musical that completely changed the original story and was a spectacular flop, closing after only 5 shows. It would later gain a cult following from bootleg recordings, but that's a story for another time. Do you remember this movie? Do you wish you didn't? Is this going to be your next late night movie watch with your friend Mary Jane? Let me know in the comments and tell me what you want to hear about next.